We are just after the end of World War II, in a climate where American scientific research and military innovation are booming. At this time, the United States recognizes the power of unconventional weapons and decides to invest heavily in biological warfare programs. At Fort Detrick, located in the state of Maryland, the U.S. Army Biological Warfare Laboratories design and test pathogens intended for offensive or defensive applications. The experiments carried out in these laboratories involve manipulating bacteria, viruses, and various toxins to understand their destructive capabilities, but also their limits. The international context is marked by the emerging rivalry between the East and the West, and American authorities fear a Soviet chemical or biological attack as much as they hope to develop them themselves to maintain strategic superiority. The mindset turns towards deterrence, the fear of being caught off guard, and the determination never to be surpassed. For a country like the United States, which emerged victorious from the war in 1945 with unprecedented military and economic power, exploring all avenues to retain its lead is considered a national priority. Meanwhile, the public, still shaken by the massive destruction caused by World War II, is unaware of the extent of this research. The American public is aware that their country is developing defense projects, but they are unaware of the scale of the trials taking place at Fort Detrick or other specialized military facilities. The researchers and military personnel working there maintain a certain discretion, publicly legitimizing some research under the guise of self-defense, while other, more delicate programs remain secret. Gradually, the Cold War sets in, fueling paranoia in the political class and intelligence services. The Soviet Union, asserting itself as a nuclear and ideological power, generates intense fears among American leaders. This geopolitical context fuels a desire to access so-called unconventional weapons. CIA leaders and some army officers believe that, against the Soviet enemy, every advantage must be exploited. Biological and chemical weapons appear as an additional form of deterrence, potentially more secretive and stealthier than conventional bombs. The leaders already imagine multiple scenarios: contamination of enemy food sources, crop sabotage, targeted elimination of key figures, or discrete neutralization of entire troops. This prospect appeals to strategists because it allows them to believe that there are means to operate in the shadows, causing damage that is difficult to prove and therefore difficult to sanction. Domestically, authorities invoke the need to prepare for any eventuality, justifying these developments by the fear of a surprise attack. Military memorandums and CIA notes often emphasize the importance of tactical surprise, considered decisive in the case of a global conflict or indirect confrontation with the USSR. In the early 1950s, a rapprochement occurs between the clandestine services of the CIA, notably the Technical Services Staff, and the Special Operations Division of the U.S. Army's Chemical Corps, itself based at Fort Detrick. This Special Operations Division brings together experts in chemical and biological development who already benefit from well-equipped facilities. They have laboratories, secure spaces, and stocks of pathogens studied since the end of the war. CIA agents, on their part, need discreet and official access to these resources without drawing attention to their own clandestine operations. Both entities find their mutual benefit. The CIA gains a military partner to handle and store toxic agents, and the Army can justify its research budget with an essential security component. This collaboration is formalized in the early 1950s through a charter that specifies that the Chemical Corps and its Special Operations Division will provide material and logistical support to the CIA in the biological and chemical domain. In this document, the division of tasks is mentioned. Fort Detrick is responsible for the production, packaging, and storage of substances, while the CIA is in charge of using them in the field, within the framework of clandestine operations. The official reason given is national defense, but the confidential nature of these programs means that only a small handful of people actually know the ins and outs of this partnership. Quickly, a specific code name is mentioned: MKNAOMI. This project follows in the footsteps of other research programs initiated under acronyms like Bluebird, MK Ultra, or MK Delta. While MK Ultra focuses mainly on mind manipulation, the search for psychoactive agents, and various scientific mind control techniques, MKNAOMI concentrates more on biological and chemical arsenal, thus on more concrete methods. Some see MKNAOMI as the material manifestation of a broader strategy. If mental control and psychological subversion represent an invisible weapon aimed at the brain, toxins and pathogens represent a method just as discreet but directed towards the body. In internal reports, the MKNAOMI program is often presented as an indispensable complement. Field agents are provided not only with tools to influence the mind, but also with substances that can neutralize a target permanently or temporarily, always with the utmost discretion. The plan is based on a series of objectives, some declared and others hidden. Officially, the CIA wishes to have a set of toxins and biological agents intended to neutralize a threat. The military uses the term incapacitating to describe substances that would not necessarily cause death, but would be powerful enough to prevent an individual or group from defending or reacting. They also include lethal compounds which, if precisely dosed, allow causing a death without leaving obvious marks. The range of products goes from animal toxins like cobra venom or saxitoxin from shellfish to potentially devastating pathogens like smallpox, anthrax, or various forms of encephalitis. In theory, the CIA justifies this by explaining that in case of conflict, the response capability must be total, both psychologically and biologically. However, behind the scenes, the real goal of the project is to be able to conduct extremely targeted undercover actions. It involves, for example, assassinating an enemy leader by making their death appear natural, contaminating crops without anyone being able to trace the origin of the attack, or discreetly eliminating livestock to weaken the enemy economically. This degree of stealth requires specific logistics. It is necessary to be able to store agents in protected places, regularly check their quality, and then quickly transport them to where the operation takes place. American embassies abroad, sometimes used as cover, are among the possible delivery points, as well as certain CIA stations implanted on different continents. The officials seek to develop a secure delivery network while limiting knowledge of this program to a small circle of people. The success of this logistical setup relies on compartmentalization. Each actor knows only part of the procedure, which prevents accidental disclosure of the entire project. Several individuals are among the key personalities of MKNAOMI. Sidney Gottlieb, already famous for his role in MK Ultra, becomes one of the masterminds of the CIA's chemical and biological branch. A chemist by training, this man enjoys great trust within the agency, as he is perceived as someone who knows both how to supervise laboratory research and imagine concrete field applications. He plays a central role in the coordination between the CIA and Fort Detrick, evaluating the potential outcomes of each discovery. Gottlieb is convinced that the use of biological agents, whether poisons or pathogens, represents an additional means to destabilize the adversary. At Fort Detrick, there are officers of the SOD who work directly on the manipulation of microbes or toxins. These specialists, trained to study the lethality, spread, and resistance of various agents, maintain a close relationship with the civilian or military scientists who already work within the research center. Their expertise is invaluable for selecting the most virulent strains or identifying the dosages necessary for discrete action. They are also responsible for developing techniques to protect the operator handling these substances, as any laboratory incident could prove catastrophic on a human and scientific level. As MKNAOMI progresses, the issue of document preservation becomes sensitive. The leaders want to keep enough records to organize and improve the research, but they fear potential disclosure could expose the entire operation. From the start, a classification system is put in place that restricts access to only the directly involved parties. Research notes, experiment reports, and meeting minutes are stored in secure safes, and only a few top officials are authorized to consult them. As technology evolves, tests multiply. The development of dispersal tools, research on the stability of agents under real conditions, verification of the lethal dose necessary to reach a specific target. The collected data is carefully recorded, but it does not circulate freely. Some members of management are so afraid of a scandal that they encourage the regular destruction of certain records, especially when it comes to human trial protocols or delicate manipulations. Thus, a part of the program's memory self-destructs, so that only a few fragments will later emerge when attempts are made to shed light on what really happened. Outside these circles, the public, both American and international, is unaware. The tensions of the Cold War already fueled discussions about the nuclear threat and the dangers of espionage. But the possibility that a top-secret biological weapons program is developing at the heart of the United States is largely not considered in popular consciousness. The rare voices that mention the possibility of unethical experiments hit a wall of silence or are dismissed as conspiracy theorists. In popular culture, biological threats are more often the stuff of science fiction scenarios or disaster films. On the diplomatic front, Western allies and NATO are mainly focused on the missile threat. Biological weapons are a topic rarely addressed officially, although there are international treaties stating principles of limitation and prohibition. However, at the top of the state, some believe that this discretion is precisely the key to effectiveness. The enemy, preoccupied with guarding against a major nuclear conflict, could be caught off guard by an invisible attack using poisons, viruses, or bacteria. In the utmost secrecy, scientists and officials within the CIA and the US military are currently designing an arsenal of harmful substances capable of attacking the human or animal body in multiple ways. The archives that circulate discreetly mention the presence of several pathogens with formidable properties, such as anthrax, which causes severe infections, or certain forms of encephalitis, capable of inflaming the brain and causing significant neurological dysfunctions. There are also agents capable of triggering often fatal respiratory infections, whose symptoms at first glance seem linked to natural diseases. This wide range of germs or bacteria can be incredibly useful for those seeking to eliminate an individual undetectably, since the symptoms generally resemble a spontaneous medical issue. Alongside these classic infection vectors, other, even more specific substances join the secret stocks. The teams working on the project focus on pure toxins, notably saxitoxin, found in certain shellfish and acting rapidly on the nervous system, or various animal venoms that can cause almost instant paralysis or cardiac arrest. The idea is to gather several options, each responding to precise operational needs. If it's anticipated that an officer in the field needs to incapacitate a target from a distance, a small accessory containing a powerful toxin may suffice. If, however, the aim is to harm a larger population or affect the livestock of an enemy region, the strategy involves dispersing pathogens in the air so they spread among the animals or contaminate essential agricultural crops. The leaders emphasize the need to offer a range of biological and chemical weapons that remain easy to transport and implement while blending into the background. The objective, in all cases, is to cause considerable, even definitive damage, without leaving a formal trace and without a thorough examination necessarily leading to the real instigators. Alongside the creation of this toxic arsenal, a whole range of gadgets is being developed to facilitate the dissemination or administration of poisons and biological agents. Engineers, in collaboration with chemists, are developing prototypes capable of spraying a contaminating cloud, sometimes dubbed aerosolization devices, to spread a toxin in the environment without arousing suspicion. An individual can, for instance, activate the device under the guise of a simple maneuver, such as lighting a lighter or triggering a camera, so that the diffusion occurs almost imperceptibly. Field teams are trained to handle these small instruments, often concealable in a briefcase or an everyday object, allowing an operator to trigger a spray in an enclosed space, hallway, or vehicle without drawing the attention of those present. In the same spirit, portable devices identified under various code names, including the M1 dissemination device, are developed to inject, project, or emit the required dose of poison at the opportune moment. The intention is to prevent the target from realizing they are being exposed to a potentially lethal agent. From an operational point of view, this type of weapon presents an invaluable advantage. It avoids direct confrontation, reduces the risk of legal prosecution, and often leads one to believe in a natural death or accident. Among these secret inventions, the poison dart gun acquires an almost legendary status. It is designed to propel tiny projectiles containing just enough toxin to cause death or immediate paralysis. The dart, particularly thin, discreetly penetrates the skin, sometimes without the targeted person feeling sharp pain. The initial impact can pass unnoticed, and the slight wound it leaves is so small that a superficial examination may not necessarily reveal it. Experimenters test several substances to fill these darts, including venom extracts capable of rapidly halting vital functions, or toxins like saxitoxin, known to cause severe neurological and cardiac issues. The administrator of this gun hopes that an apparently natural heart attack will then deceive any hurried investigator, and that the death will not raise exaggerated suspicions. During internal demonstrations, the possibility of using less powerful versions of these darts is also evaluated to neutralize guard animals, such as dogs, to infiltrate a secured site. In these scenarios, the animals are first put to sleep with an anesthetic product, and then, once the operation is completed, awakened with an antidote, so that no one suspects an intrusion. The documents that remain, despite numerous destructions ordered in 1973, hint at the extent of the experiments conducted. It is almost certain that many results have disappeared into shredders or furnaces, since the leaders of sensitive projects, worried about possible investigations, have destroyed as many compromising pieces as possible. As a result, only fragments of information are available, often from scattered memos. Among these, there are records of exchanges about full-scale tests on the resistance of agricultural crops to various biochemical agents conducted on isolated plots. According to a memo dated 1967, at least 3 different techniques are explored to alter or destroy crops, ranging from aerial spraying of pathogens to the direct introduction of bacteria into the soil. Other experiments, according to some fragmentary reports, focus on the effect of these biological weapons on animal species like livestock or horses, as the idea is to undermine an adversary's ability to conduct military operations or meet the needs of their population. The program's facilitators also try to understand the incubation time, propagation speed, and reliability of each agent to optimize deployment strategies in the field. This policy of large-scale experimentation leads to numerous suspicions and speculations. Some independent researchers and journalists claim that the Special Operations Division, actively involved in storing and testing these toxins, might be linked to enigmatic events causing massive poisonings or strange behaviors among civilian populations. Among the most frequently mentioned accounts, the case of a mysterious incident in a French village, Pont Saint-Esprit, provokes much debate. In 1951, several residents were struck by hallucinations and violent behaviors, which some interpreted as the result of deliberate poisoning. Hypotheses ranged from accidental rye flour contamination to a secret experiment, and the shadow of programs like MKNAOMI loomed over this affair. However, historians remain divided and point out that the evidence linking this episode to the CIA or the US military remains very thin and notoriously difficult to establish. The uncertainty is even greater when it comes to determining which exact units and departments are involved, as the hierarchy deliberately compartmentalizes everything to isolate information. In November 1969, American President Richard Nixon, in office since January of the same year, officially announced that the United States was ending its offensive biological warfare research and programs. He declared that maintaining such a capability was against the nation's principles and called for the immediate destruction of all existing stocks. The announcement, made on November 25th, surprised both some members of the intelligence community and numerous military experts accustomed to these discrete operations. In the tense context of the Cold War, where a non-conventional Soviet attack was still feared, this decision represented a radical shift and generated some distrust within intelligence circles. Within the CIA, several officials questioned the exact scope of the presidential order and the concrete consequences of such a ban. Many feared that dismantling these activities would deprive the agency of means deemed vital for clandestine operations. Nonetheless, The directive from the White House, accompanied by international public commitments, was generally seen as a strong signal of the American willingness to reduce the risks of biological weapons proliferation. At the beginning of the following year, on February 14, 1970, Nixon fulfilled his commitment by extending the ban, this time to specific toxins that did not necessarily fall under the traditional scope of biological warfare. This presidential order stipulated that even natural substances, such as the venom of certain animals, had to be destroyed or removed from arsenals intended for offensive actions. The MKNAOMI program, one of the CIA's most secretive branches for the development and management of these dozens of toxic agents, was then officially condemned to closure. The government demanded the swift dissolution of this clandestine device and the destruction of any remaining agents in military or agency storage. To a part of the public opinion, this break with the secret past aligned with the need for transparency and the idea that the United States must adhere to stricter ethical standards in the research and development of non-conventional weapons. Behind the scenes, however, some individuals within the CIA thought it would be dangerous to completely give up this type of capability. They considered that keeping a reserve of extremely potent biological agents or toxins might represent a last resort for very particular scenarios, whether it be targeted eliminations or discreet sabotage. In fact, despite Nixon's declarations and new laws framing the destruction of these programs, a small group of officials and scientists did not strictly follow the presidential order. In an atmosphere where concealment was almost the norm, some stocks were clandestinely preserved outside the official destruction procedures. Later documents reveal that about 11 grams of saxitoxin, a marine toxin of formidable effectiveness, and a significant quantity of cobra venom were discreetly transferred from Fort Detrick to a more discreet laboratory. This facility, located in the vicinity of Washington, was far from usual military controls and regular Pentagon inspections. The situation changed dramatically in the mid-1970s, when the American public became aware of numerous abuses committed by the Secret Services. In the wake of the Watergate scandal, which tarnished Nixon's presidency, Congress members called for more transparency and oversight of the CIA's clandestine activities. Successive revelations concerning the illegal surveillance of political opponents, the infiltration of social movements, and the planning of targeted assassination operations had sowed doubt in the minds of citizens and legislators. Under pressure from several senators, including Frank Church, a special committee was established in 1975 to examine the practices of intelligence agencies. This body, quickly nicknamed the Church Committee after its chairman, embarked on a broad investigation aimed at shedding light on all the suspect activities of the CIA and other secret services, including programs related to biological and chemical weapons. The most striking revelation, which gives a concrete face to this clandestine program, occurs when committee members discover the existence of a poison dart gun. This device, seemingly straight out of a spy novel, is designed to fire small darts coated with toxin. At the moment of impact, the victim may succumb to a cardiac arrest that is not immediately attributable to an attack. Presented in the full Senate to illustrate the nature of the weapons developed under MKNAOMI, it becomes the symbol of the chilling ingenuity of the CIA's secret laboratories. The object, reminiscent of a Hollywood film prop, makes headlines and sows dismay because it confirms the existence of deadly tools intended for targeted assassinations, contrary to official declarations for several years. Shit, meta, pause, sex 2.0. Facing growing pressure, Sidney Gottlieb, formerly responsible for the CIA's chemical and biological programs, agrees to testify before the senators. He obtains partial immunity to speak freely and not incriminate himself. However, his testimony, particularly awaited, disappoints some members of the committee. Gottlieb remains vague, mentions the necessity to act within the framework of the Cold War, and highlights the common practice of destroying documents for security reasons. He admits that he and others, indeed, had responsibilities in managing unconventional weapons, but he downplays the magnitude of the threat and maintains that these toxins were never used on a large scale. For many senators, this speech seems carefully calibrated to avoid an even bigger scandal. Some suspect that many other pieces of information remain hidden or were destroyed before the committee could access them. Meta, pause, sex 2.0. Over the course of the hearings, the Church Committee broadens its investigation and discovers that a significant number of archives were destroyed as early as 1973, probably on the orders of Gottlieb and other senior CIA officers. Precise references to operations, tests, or the exact logistics of MKNAOMI thus disappear from the official records, making it very difficult to fully reconstruct the program's history. The senators then insist on the need to create stricter control frameworks to prevent such deviations from happening again. They emphasize the urgency of reforming the oversight mechanisms of intelligence agencies to ensure that presidential statements and the law can no longer be circumvented so easily.